Welcome to day 357. We're finishing up 1 Peter and in 2 Peter, which will be in 2 Peter the whole time. Lots of wonderful things again. Let's get at it. How to grow in your faith. In 2 Peter 1, verses 4 through 7, it gives us this understanding of how to grow in our faith. And we always ask, how can I be better? How can I be happier? We've actually touched on this each day. And the reason that it's coming up even more now is because we're getting closer and closer to how we're supposed to live as we get near the end. Now, you're supposed to live like this for all time, from Adam and Eve to now. But the point is, it's coming up now because it's getting harder and harder to live like this, and people need to hear these messages of how to live. Okay? In the view of all this, make every effort to respond to God's promises. Supplement your faith with a generous provision of moral excellence, and moral excellence with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, self-control with patient endurance, and patient endurance with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love for everyone. So all of those things are all tied together, how we're supposed to live. Now let's talk about the bright morning star. Christ, the morning star. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 19. Because of that experience, we have even greater confidence in the message proclaimed by the prophets. So the prophets we've already talked about, and they talked about the things to come. Okay? You must pay close attention to what they wrote, for their words are like a lamp shining in a dark place until the day dawns and Christ the morning star shines. He is the morning star in your hearts, okay? And then you also have Revelation 2:28, Revelation 22:16, which talks about Christ being the morning star. Okay, in the tribulation, really these are things that are happening now, but the Bible's talking about how it's going to be in the tribulation, which should make your ears perk up being like, wait a minute, that's going to happen in the tribulation? I see that happening now. This is going to be on a global scale in tribulation. So 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 2, many will follow their evil teaching and shameful immorality, talking about people being led astray by teachers. And because of these teachers, the way of truth will be slandered. Justice is perverted. Truth is going to be twisted and just neglected, rebelled against, just because you want to do whatever you want to do. Verse 4, for God did not spare even the angels who sinned. He threw them into hell in gloomy pits of darkness, where they are being held until the day of judgment. I don't want to read the next part yet. Then we have a number 7 in verse 5. Talks about Noah and his 7 other family members. And God did not spare the ancient world except for Noah and the 7 others in his family. There's a 7 reference, so I just had to mention that. Okay? And now I want to talk about verse 9. And these kind of just go right in order with what is so important. There's so much here. Saving, at the same time punishing. Chapter 2, verse 9, it says this. This is how awesome God is. So you see, the Lord knows how to rescue godly people from their trials. Now, it doesn't say they didn't go through trials. He rescues them from their trials while keeping the wicked under punishment until the day of final judgment. So this is going on now. If you're going through a trial, you're being rescued through that. Okay, Daniel had to go into the lion's den, but God rescued him through it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had to go into the fiery furnace, and God saw them through it. Okay, so he can save at the same time punishing the bad people. Here's a tribulation part, verses 12 through 14. These false teachers are like unthinking animals. They don't know the truth. They just do what their hearts desire, which means they're going to hurt you. They're going to do everything they can to make their lives better, stomping all over you. These false teachers are like unthinking animals, creatures of instinct, born to be caught and destroyed. They scoff at things they do not understand, and like animals, they will be destroyed. Their destruction is their reward for the harm they have done. They love to indulge in evil pleasures in broad daylight. Think of your television. They are a disgrace and a stain among you. They delight in deception, even as they eat with you in your fellowship meals. They commit adultery with their eyes, and their desire for sin is never satisfied. They lure unstable people into sin, and they are well trained in greed. They live under God's curse. Amazing. Mockers, scoffers, where's Jesus? Where's he been all this time? That's what they're going to say in the tribulation. Okay, 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. Most importantly, I want to remind you that in the last days, scoffers will come, mocking the truth and following their own desires. What do their itching ears want to hear? We've talked about all this. They don't care about the truth. They're rebelling against God. They were not chosen because God knew that they would rebel. So God doesn't live just in the present. He's in the past, the present, and the future all at the same time. So he knew all of this. They will say, what happened to the promise that Jesus is coming again? From before the times of our ancestors, everything has remained the same since the world was first created. They deliberately forget that God made the heavens long ago by the word of his command, and he brought the earth out from the water and surrounded it with water. Then he used the water to destroy the ancient world with a mighty flood. Okay, so we now get into heaven and earth being stored up for fire. We talked about this another time in Hebrews 12. Verse 7, and by the same word, the present heavens and earth have been stored up for fire. Everything's going to be destroyed. That's why there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. They are being kept for the day of judgment, when ungodly people will be destroyed. Scary, scary things. Okay? Verse 12, I'm going to read that as well. Looking forward to the day of God and hurrying it along. On that day, he will set the heavens on fire, and the elements will melt away in the flames. Verse 10. But the day of the Lord will come as unexpectedly as a thief. Then the heavens will pass away with a terrible noise, and the very elements themselves will disappear in the fire. And the earth and everything on it will be found to deserve judgment. Okay, like unexpectedly as a thief, that's the rapture when God comes, because all the other stuff is we understand. The second coming, we don't know when that is. But when the second coming happens, everybody in the world sees it. He comes down in the clouds of heaven with all of us behind him, comes into Jerusalem, or comes into Petra or whatever, the rock city, and he grabs all the people that have escaped from Jerusalem, goes into Jerusalem, takes care of business, goes into Armageddon, and by the breath of his mouth annihilates the armies of the world. That's not a moment. Okay, the moment of the breath annihilating them, that's a moment. But unexpectedly of a thief, meaning boom, it's a surprise, and Christ will surprise everybody, but everybody will see it, and it'll be happening in moments, not in a moment, okay? The rapture is a moment. It is in a blink of an eye. Okay? So the last thing, a new heaven and a new earth, which we've already alluded to, verses 12 and 13, which I already talked about. Verse 12, the elements will melt away in the flames. Verse 13, but we are looking forward to the new heavens and new earth he has promised, a world filled with God's righteousness. So there you have a good picture of how we should live, what's going to happen in the tribulation, how people act, the rapture happening, and then the second coming happening, and then heaven and earth being put through fire, and a new heaven and new earth coming at the end for the great white throne judgment. That is your day 357. I'll see you tomorrow.